How's it going? Good Sunday evening. It's been a nice weekend. My Badgers were very close to a court storm and a field storm this weekend. We beat Arizona in basketball pretty handily on Friday, and they stormed the court, which Arizona was number 9. I don't know if that was necessarily warranted, but it felt good, and I think the people of Madison needed a little juice. So they took it, and it was a great game. It was actually probably one of our biggest wins in several years, so let's do it. And Saturday night, we took Oregon to the wire in football. Lost 16-13, which was kind of a bummer. We had the ball with 2.5 minutes left and threw an interception, which was just kind of par for the course lately. But, the game ended up getting our offensive coordinator fired. A lot of people have kind of thought that was in the making. Something wasn't clicking, and I wish him the best of luck. He seems like a good guy. But anyway, what I thought I would do is I take notes a little bit during my weekend training peaks, and I thought I'd use those kind of for prompts to have a little discussion here, and just talk about some things. Maybe they'll click, and hopefully help you figure something out and make this journey a little more enjoyable and easier and whatever you want to do. So somebody was asking me about Zone 2 and should we do it through the rest of the year? And a lot of people are asking these types of questions. And we always talk about Zone 2 on the podcast and how valuable it is and how important it is for racing. And the problem becomes that so many people get quote unquote bored with Zone 2. So what does that mean? Well, I think a lot of times it means you're maybe not going hard enough. Zone 2 should just, there's a Zone 2 is bottom of Zone 2 and the upper of Zone 2. So I think a lot of people confuse Zone 2 with Zone 1 or low Zone 2, which of course is Zone 2. But I mean, for me, the value is kind of stretching it out to the top of Zone 2 and making it something uncomfortable, a little bit uncomfortable, but not something that's going to stop you. Just so you know, and I have trained for years without power and feel like that's when I do my best training. And usually it's kind of, sort of brought together by the really good feel that I have for things and have learned over the years. And I'll just get on that bike or run, and sort of find that spot where it's just a little bit, kind of a nuisance, but not something that's going to stop me. It's something I could probably go for a long time. And that's, of course, the goal of this whole sport of Ironman and 70.3 really is to kind of build that ability to keep going at a pretty rigorous level of effort. So I don't do it enough. I have the same thing. I'm vulnerable in that sense that I think it kind of can be kind of boring, but it's one of those things, man, where if you get better at it and get used to it and you start seeing progress, you'll find it more enjoyable. And that's the same, just basically with the trainer in general. The better you get and the more comfortable you get on there, the better off you are and the more you look forward to it, because trainer rides can just really suck if you're not sort of in the groove for them. But I mean, what could be better than a trainer ride for practicing triathlon? I don't think many things. I mean, I know riding outside is super important, but there's something about the grind and the focus of being on a trainer, especially for a long time, that I think really translates, because you never stop spinning and hopefully you have a little more resistance out on the road. You can kind of coast and whatever. But so, I mean, you got to have both. You got to have good handling skills and what have you. But Zone 2, for me, is where probably most people need to work on, to be honest. I kind of feel like our top speed is sort of our top speed. I mean, as we get older, you can probably improve it, but the reality is you want to be able to sort of be able to maintain a moderate speed for a longer time. So second thing I noticed is this time of year, well, it seems like most times a year, but a lot of people seem to kind of be coming down with something. And usually it's sort of a coldish, situation. And I will continue to maintain that I think colds are mostly our body just trying to detox something. So what does that mean to me? Whenever I feel that kind of sore throaty thing or itchy thing or my nose getting a little clogged up, I'm always immediately going into deep breathing routines, like for 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to beat this off before it gets in me. So in other words, I think oxygenating the body and creating a better flow of blood and, drinking, of course, a lot of fluids and that sort of thing. I like to do sauna, of course, too, but I always have to do that with a lot of liquids because that can really dehydrate you, and that's not a good thing either. But anyway, the point being is that I'm not quick to go to the medicine on this type of thing. I do believe, of course, I've had, quote unquote, these cold symptoms a little bit over the last 5 to 10 years, but for the most part, I've been doing this deep breathing right when it starts to come in, and I just go in hard. And I do it for, like I said, 30 minutes, but I do it twice a day, sometimes more, right before bed, right when I get up, all these kind of things, because I think it's just stuff getting clogged up, and I think oxygen helps everything. Which reminds me, for some reason today, actually it was yesterday, I woke up with I just could feel like a little something off. It was like just a real small rash on both sides of my hips, like above the hips on the sides. And then there was some other place, maybe on my shin or something, but it was this weird little rash. And I kind of, in my gut, was sensing that it might be a heat rash or a dehydration thing or something, because I hit the sauna hard like the last few days. But my first instinct was to be like, oh, I got to go splash some stuff on there, take some kind of something or whatever. But I decided not to think about it. And again, do deep breathing and just kind of, have the confidence to up the, water, and just have the confidence in my body to just kind of figure it out without obsessing about it. And it's kind of gone away or slowly reduced itself. And I couldn't figure out what the hell it could have been from. Maybe it was too much heat or something, but it was just such a random thing. But again, that's the way I think. I don't go immediately to the, medicine cabinet and just start throwing stuff in, because I personally think that adds to more layers of why we get sick. But that's a, discussion for another long coffee shop visit. So along the lines, and I mentioned the word confidence in your body and things like that. And I just wanted to throw this out there because last weekend I was talking about, I played wiffle ball for the first time. It was basically the first time in 20, 30 years maybe I played with, threw a ball and tried to hit a ball. But it kind of got me, got my juices going a little bit. So I ordered one of those pitchback things. It's a net that you can throw a ball in and it comes back to you. And I went out there yesterday. I got it set up and went out there yesterday. I just took a tennis ball and didn't stand too far away from it because I've had a bad shoulder. So that's why I haven't really thrown much in a long time, because I literally felt like I couldn't throw anything very far. And if it did, it was really painful right here in that little top part. So I was like, man, I just kind of didn't really do much about it. I was doing a lot of, I was trying things like bands and hanging and stuff like that. And I had some relief in there, but I think it's a chronic inflammation, which could be directly related to something that I'm eating constantly, because it does seem worse sometimes. And after, it may feel great one day and feel like shit the next. So I do think there's something to be said for that, whether it's seed oils or too much sugar or bread or something. I don't know. I haven't really dove into it. But anyway, I took the thing out there and I tried to throw. It was very discouraging, to say the least. I was just trying to hit the thing. It's like 4 feet wide by 6 feet high or something like that. And I was just trying to hit it, and then I would just kind of feel the rebound. And I was really at a point where I was just throwing balls right in the ground. I couldn't find any kind of release point or anything. So but I've made the decision, because my buddy is playing in a baseball league 60 over baseball league. He keeps trying to recruit me to play shortstop down there next year at this time. So I don't know. I thought about this, and he's been doing it for a while. So anyway, I made the commitment that I'm just going to kind of get out there as long as the weather holds and do it like 100 throws and just try to get it back. And today I went out there and I actually took the tennis ball out, and then I went to what do you call it, like a lacrosse ball that bounces and it's a little heavier. And I started really finding it. It was after one day. Yesterday, I thought I was the worst baseball player there was. And then today, I started finding something. So I guess I want to relate that to not only is confidence built, patiently, but secondly, my arm started feeling like it was kind of coming back. And I mean, that pain is still in there, but the more I threw, the less it hurt. And I think that really applies to a lot of triathlete stuff too, And I know we've all been there. It kind of hurts in the beginning, and then as you get going, it starts feeling better. But I sometimes wonder if that isn't like our course, like we have to. How do we get through that? Because just because we're sore doesn't mean we're injured. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, how do you get going? Because I see that a lot. I was sore this morning. I was sore, and then as I got going or whatever. But I don't want to say that we should normalize being sore. I really don't, because I do think that it probably has mostly something to do with our diet, to be honest, or our dehydration levels. So I think that's ultimately the place we have to look at. But if it kind of is sore and then you start going and it's not sore anymore, you must realize, or we have to realize, I think, that there's nothing wrong with us. It's just some kind of inflammation that's hanging out that's causing us, discomfort. So that's something I just wanted to throw out there. And this shit is going way longer than I thought, but I don't care. This is just what I'm going to do. You don't have to watch. It doesn't matter. I've talked about getting up early. Did I call it? No, zone 2. So what's something else? Oh, speed workouts. We talk about zone 2, and there's also this stuff about how people get kind of in like a funk with their running. They're just sort of like the same runner, and we run all the same, and we're going to be the same speed, and it just never really changes. And we talk about building the chassis before you can build the engine and stuff like that. But I do think that there's definitely something about, when I think of speed workouts, I never think about all out, especially with running. I just think about more like letting your body free and letting your legs flow a little bit faster and just releasing yourself more than trying harder. Because Jeff sent me an article about don't try. And of course, that's Bukowski's big thing. And I think a lot of times, that I've always loved the saying, don't try, because it sort of takes the edge off of it. And to me, it sort of weaves its way in as be more relaxed. But also, I've always thought of that as don't try to be somebody you're not. And that to me is a massive way to approach running, because especially if maybe you were, 5-minute miler back in the day, and you're, 40 years removed, 30 years removed from that, don't try to be that person. Just understand that you can still go faster, but your body may not be as limber or, basically strong and resilient as it used to be. So you have to, keep yourself in a zone where you're not overdoing the physical movement. So that's another thing. Like when I try to speed up, it's the weirdest thing. I keep my cadence, my turnover about the same, but they're just shorter and they're a little quicker, So it's not like we think of running as a kid where you're digging in and taking super long strides and just going after it. It's just kind of can you be faster with a similar cadence that you're going? And then when I slow down, I try to keep a little bit of the same cadence, but just go slower. And it's a great experiment. So the point being here is that speed workers, are they necessary? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I think it's good to have speed work. I think strides are super underrated. I think every time you see strides, you should do them. 30 seconds, 4 to 6 times or 8 times or whatever at the end of your run. That kind of keeps your legs used to doing what you'd like them to do. And then just maybe a good speed workout where it's an hour and about 20 minutes of that is actually speed work, or 10 to 15 minutes, or I don't know, whatever it may be. Monteghetti's my favorite speed workout. It's sort of a hard on for 30, off for 30, on for 30, off for 30, and then you go up 45, 60, and then 130, and then you come back down the ladder. It's about a 22-minute segment, but with a warm-up and a cool-down. So those are great, man. I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle, but also you have to be able to handle it. So, again, I would not, put my high school mentality into those speed runs. Even though you want to, I had to remember that when I was out taking ground balls. I was trying to, some of those balls would bounce off of that thing funny, and my first reaction was just go get it. I had to go let it go. I had to let it go because I knew, I could just tell that I don't have that lateral movement and that explosiveness anymore. But I do think I can get it back, but I think it comes slow. So that's the other part, right? If you're going to do speed work, let it build and just get more and more comfortable and confident with it. What else? We're talking about, somebody's talking about swimming and swim fins. Now, I know Robbie will just completely trash this idea, but I picked up some of those small fins that just kind of go, they're not too much bigger than your feet, but they give you the same feeling as paddles. And for me, if you didn't grow up swimming, I know a lot of people kick when they're younger, and they kick a lot in the swim drills when they're in high school or younger. And they're doing 5,000 yards maybe a couple of times a day sometimes. And they're doing all kinds of drills like that. And there's the one thing I know about my swimming is that it's okay. And I mean, I think it's okay because I swim enough and I do a lot of push-ups and pull-ups and stuff. And I think my upper body is kind of strong enough to handle my shit form. But I think form comes with, the ability to sort of stay on top of the water, in the right position. And to me, just having a good control over your feet is a great asset. So that's why I think they're sort of like paddles for your feet. And to me, it helps understand the feel of the foot a little bit better. So I don't know. I mean, like everything else, if it helps, I don't think I'd rely on it, but it's just like I don't rely on paddles, but I do love using paddles because they kind of give me a better feeling for the water. So, an understanding of the water. So it's sort of like when we were in baseball and we warm up we put like a donut on the end of the bat to make it heavier. And that's just, when you take it off, that's one of the actually hardest things to do. If you take off paddles, you understand how much different that feels. When you take off a donut off a bat that might be a couple of pounds, that bat feels really light. So you have to almost control it a little bit more, because I don't think theoretically you're swinging faster, but it seems like you are. So and the same with the swimming. It's easier to move your arms through the water without paddles, obviously. So it's a different feeling. I think you just have to kind of marry both of those feelings, where you have good control of the bat or your arms, with or without the weight on them or resistance. And the other thing is speaking of swimming, I personally look at swimming as one of those things where, a lot of us didn't swim a lot. So, sometimes I'll schedule 2,000-yard swims, and some people that's probably a huge deal. Other people, it's like no big deal. But still, that's 2,000 yards. That's 20 football fields. That seems like a long ways to swim if you're not a really great swimmer. But I do think that there's a magic point, at least in my Ironman training, is like whenever I get to a point where I can feel like 3,000 isn't that big of a deal, kind of seems like a smaller swim, that's when I know I'm in a good spot, because you can sort of, I mean, what the Ironman is 4,000 or a little over. So when you get to 3 and feel like that's like no big deal, that's a good measuring stick for me. So I would say, you know, if I'm giving you swims of 2,500 or whatever, and you're feeling pretty good, just start kind of tacking on a little bit and get up around 3,000, because that's just such a magical point, because then you're talking about 1,000 yards, almost more than a half. So you're going to be really comfortable out there without beating yourself up. You know, it's obviously different for running, but swimming, I think you can kind of push it like that. And, you know, volume is king, especially when we didn't swim when we were young. You know, you got a lot of catching up to do. And, you know, learning that sort of foreign language at an old age isn't as easy either. So that's a huge deal. Whatever. Oh, I got a guy, you know, he just did 100K, and I would say at least one time a week, usually 2. He spent a good 45 or an hour on the elliptical, sometimes longer. And sometimes he'd sub out a long run for an elliptical. And his first 100K went really well. I mean, we mixed around swims and bikes too, but he put a lot of time in on the elliptical. And one of the things he does is he'll, you know, and this is one of the things I don't do a lot of times. I do sometimes, but he'll watch, you know, learning type stuff on YouTube while he's doing the elliptical, and it's just a nice, comfortable, casual, attainable workout for him. That's sort of his go-to if he's a little bit off, maybe on the run, and he doesn't feel like getting out there and might, you know, feel a little tired. He'll just get on the elliptical and basically do what I was saying earlier, is that zone 2. You know, it's probably a little bit lower zone 2 type of thing usually, but that's fine too. I mean, I think that's great. You build your aerobic base, and I don't see where you can go wrong. And so I think there's things like that. Lately, I've been kind of doing that on the rower. I know rowing's a hard workout, but when you're kind of not going after it too hard, it's something that can kind of, you know, I can't do elliptical 45 or rower for 50 minutes or whatever, but I probably could if I just took it super easy. But anyway, the point is a combined shit, you know, because I think, and I don't know, a lot of us probably don't get in the habit of just watching things, you know. Instead, I mean, a lot of times we'll watch on the train or on the bike, but you know, that's confusing too, because if you're trying to really focus on the bike and I have a hard time sometimes if I'm watching something. Next thing I know, I'm drifting out. I'm not even pedaling anymore half the time. But you know what I'm saying. I think that's kind of it. Somebody was asking about. Oh, they were talking about. You know, sometimes you're not feeling it, and the only thing you do, you know, the habit to build is just get up and get out the door in the morning. I'm not a morning guy, but you know, and if I do, if I do anything in the morning, usually it's kind of a get up and walk or do a treadmill hike or something, or walk along the beach, or nothing really hard, because my body is just, unless I sleep great, and I just don't like jumping right into things. That's why I think if Ironman ever moved the start time back a little bit, I might be even more effective. So there you have it. Train to heal if you're dealing with little injuries. I think the one thing is, I guess out of here that I'm really most passionate about is sort of this soreness and inflammation and things like that. It's not an injury, you know. I just think it's always some type of inflammation that's kind of, you know, I mean, you can look at everything. It's sort of like plantar fasciitis is that, you know, and there's different levels of crap like that. Although, you know, that's like severe inflammation. So how do you get that out of you? I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things I've really been curious about forever. And sometimes I'll look up best anti-inflammatory foods. And like, sometimes I try to follow it, other times I don't. But I think there's something to it. And I also think there's something to the fact that if you know that in your head, if you can remember that all the time, that it doesn't matter. If you get up and you're a little sore and you kind of get going and moving around and get through it, then you're going to be okay. But, sometimes it can't be perfect. It's really hard to be perfect in this world and eat everything perfect, because nobody knows really what the hell that even means. But I think we face daily challenges with our aches and pains and things of that nature. And as I get older, that's one of the things that I really try to focus on, is that it's here, but that doesn't mean I have to shut down. It actually probably means I have to push through it more than anything, because the longer you sit around, the more chronic that sort of pain is going to get. And if you can kind of just keep it moving, get the blood flowing, move it out of the area for a while, because it starts feeling fine, right? And then maybe the next day it's sort of similar, or hopefully a little bit better, depending on how you handled it and everything else that's going on. But anyway, that was a hell of a long ramble for a Sunday night. It is about 7:30 right now here in central Wisconsin. It's been dark for 3 hours, which is legit. It's crazy to me. But, yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking about a plunge. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't. That's another thing I've been, sometimes, plunging is one of those things that, it's a tough one. I think it really kind of, I don't want to say beats up your body, but I think it puts your body through a legit stress, which I love about it. But same with sauna, it can really kind of take you from the 40-some degree water into a hot sauna. That feels great. But sometimes I just need to take a day off, because it kicks my ass. I say kicks my ass, but I think it does it's a weird thing. I don't know. I got to watch that dehydration in the sauna. I know that much. Anyway, well, thanks for joining me tonight. And I'm going to try and keep doing these. As always, I will try to get better at them. But, it's the off season, so I think a lot of times it's a little bit slower paced. There's not as much intensity, or whatever you want to call it. No races, not many races. So hope everybody did good at Arizona. And I will catch up with you maybe tomorrow. You just never know.